Today, the president stunned markets once again, this time with a 90-day pause on tariffs, sending shockwaves through the World Trade Order. The move, which President Trump claims is aimed at resetting unfair trade deals, has traders, manufacturers and economists around the globe holding their breath, wondering what comes next. To unpack the impacts, we'll be joined in studio by in-house economist Sanellis Biya, who breaks down what this policy shift could mean for Eswatini's exports, import costs and our place in the global trade puzzle. And in our lead story today, the 2025 Sibebe Survivor Challenge has been officially launched. Let's kick off the show with our first story. Nedbank Eswatini has stepped up in a big way, donating a whopping 500,000 malangeni to power the 2025 Sibebe Survivor Challenge. The announcement was made by Nedbank's Managing Director, Fikile Nkosi, during the official launch of the 20th edition of the iconic hiking event held at Eswatini Special School in Mbabane. The Sibebe Survivor Challenge will be held on the 27th of July and it's organized by the Mbabane Mbuluzi Rotary Club.
On behalf of Nedbank Eswatini, I am delighted to extend our support, marking the 2 decades of this noble cause, with an amount of 500,000 emalangeni. This is the single largest sponsorship we've dispersed as Nedbank Eswatini to an organization as part of our corporate social investment program. This shows and demonstrates our confidence and trust in the Rotary delivering the best challenge ever this year and going forward. This year is not just special to us at Nedbank, as it marks the 20 years of not just sponsoring the phenomenal challenge, the event. It means 20 years of playing our part in Eswatini as money experts who do good, doing good to our communities. Money experts that ensure that the communities that we live with are actually beneficiaries of what we are doing. We assist the underprivileged people of Eswatini, but most importantly, the communities throughout the country. As a purpose-led bank and as the money experts who do good, ours is not just to provide loans, to sell our products, not just to provide services to our clients, but we believe that we have a moral duty as a corporate citizen to reach out, plow back, and assist the communities we operate with.
Last year, the gross income from the Sibebe Survivor Challenge was 1,432,670 malangeni. For part of the money was used for different charitable activities around the country. The amount raised was disclosed by the president of the Mbabane Mbuluzi Rotary Club's Kumbuzo Mbuyisa during the launch of this year's challenge.
I'm happy to report that last year we had about actually 3,681 registered survivors that joined us at Sibebe. The gross income was 1,432,670, and direct expenses amounted to 526,724. So the net income that was available for charitable projects was 873,445. And we take pride as a Rotary Club that we don't take any admin fee whatsoever. Whatever we get there goes to projects. So this income is kept in a separate bank account, and all our accounts are proudly with Nedbank, and they are used for projects that are approved by Rotary. Some of the focus areas that we have, it's peace and conflict prevention or resolution, The second one is disease prevention and treatment, water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, economic and community development, and then supporting the environment. So when you channel a request towards Rotary, please make sure that it falls within these focus areas.
The Mbabane Mbuluzi Rotary Club's assistance through the Sibebe Survivor Challenge has reached people of all ages and walks of life. For many recipients, the help came just in time. Some have said they have been able to improve their businesses and make meaningful income.
Rotary Club angathi usisitala njani usikhanza sibogogo siyafida sisindwa kunako kokunathela 12 liters lihobo lethu lifaka kube ngi60 wafika Rotary Club wasephula wasifaka lo sekutihambela kwemandi
mhlambe ke kuningi kakhulu lesingakubala thina sibaka Sibebe Trust ever since saqala sisebenta na Rotary kukhulu kakhulu siyakubonga lokho kunema project nje la khona lesiwendako kunema bazaries lesiwendako lapho khona sifundisa abantwana la ngicabanga ukuthi baya kubo 20 labanye sebaqedile.
The Rotarians came over to our school. It was a very great day. They came to help us renovate the kitchen. Gapunga is a school in one of the most rural areas of Swaziland.
We are doing a small farming at Tinkwene area. We have been so grateful. Kutsithole inhlanhla from Rotary wasithengela lithange lemanti 5,000 liters.
The Sibebe Survivor Challenge will be held on the 27th of July this year. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa Mbabane.
And that's it for our business news. It's 7 minutes after 2. Stay with us. We come back with Senator Bia.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market View. Thank you for staying with us. The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, has stunned markets once again, this time with a 90-day pause on tariffs, sending shockwaves through the World Trade Order. The move, which President Trump claims is aimed at resetting unfair trade deals, has traders, manufacturers and economists around the globe holding their breath, wondering what comes next. To unpack the impact, we're joined in studio by in-house economist Senator Bia, who breaks down what this policy shift could mean for Eswatini's exports, import costs, and our place in the global trade puzzle. Mr. Bia, very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Mr. Trump has been in the headlines ever since his inauguration, and just yesterday he stunned us once again. So what led the president to take this decision, a 90-day pause? What's happening in his mind?
No, thank you, Lungelele, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the viewer. So one thing you need to know about President Trump is he is first and foremost a businessman, right? And if you look at his cabinet, again, you have Elon Musk there, and at the early start of his office, at his second term in office, you saw how those tech CEOs and tech founders and quite a number of the people who were in the room came into that. So, the world was a bit worried about, are we entering a new age of American oligarchy, because we're used to the oligarchs in Russia, but not in the US. So it is not then it's not surprising when he's going to just renege on the tariff deal when the markets are really not doing well. And also another impact that saw this or that contributed to this move was the performance of the bonds and the yield markets in the US. I mean, we saw traders moving from stocks into bonds, and when they did that, but they were avoiding American debt in a way. So that somehow communicated what traders were looking out for as a longer term type of impact in terms of these tariffs. So one way or the other, I think the markets were predicting America not to come out very well from all of this. So that's what has actually contributed to President Trump making this decision. And also we cannot discount the fact that it could have just been all a maneuver from President Trump to get to get countries and companies to strike a deal and make a deal that somehow favors the U.S., which is what he has cited as the reason for this 90-day pause, where he said, we have quite a number of companies lining up to make a deal. Man. Yeah, and I mean, he used he insulted every world leader when he was addressing the Republican Congress there, saying they want to make deals, they're ready to make deals. It could have all been just about that, where we're saying, can we renegotiate, or we are going to tear it up completely. So, I mean,
does he have people that advise him? Could Elon Musk be an influence, being a businessman too, a billionaire?
No, he has advisors. If there's one thing you need to know about the American system is every president who comes in is given quite a very capable team. He has quite capable economic advisors, trade advisors, and he has seasoned economists within his team. He has seasoned politicians, the likes of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. So I do not think they would let him do quite a lot of what he's doing if and only if there was no academic or scientific rationale to it. And then also if you look at the fact that we have Congress and we have the House of Senate, again, there's a lot of checks and balances. So the fact that we have, both houses a bit quiet, not just both houses, but both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. So that somehow means everyone kind of wants this. Someone kind of wants America to go back into that competition fray again. So that's why we are seeing happening there. And it could also just have been, this is something that is coming out of the streets of social media. And I know quite a lot of people were thinking it could have just been yet another maneuver to crash it a bit so that you buy on the way up, Yeah. That's what's been discussed across all global media platforms.
Okay. Everybody's in the world is wondering what's next. Economists, manufacturers, investors wondering what's next after this 90-day pause. What really is next, Mrs. B, and how are markets reacting to this decision?
So in terms of what is next, that is the question indeed. What is next? So right now it's quite a bit, it's a bit difficult to read into it in terms of what it means for the world, for the globe, because if you look at the policy stance that's been coming out of the White House, it is kind of haphazard. You really can't tell where we're going and really what it is that we want to achieve with those policies. So those uncertainties are actually showing in the markets, right? Because if you look at the way markets have moved, if you look at the US markets, somehow they rallied yesterday after hearing this news. And then if you now look into London again, you can see that there is a bit of movement towards the positive, but it's not that much. So that's because it's not yet clear what this 90-day pause means, and also waging that trade war with China again. That's still another very tricky variable to factor into our economic thinking scope, because China seems to also be retaliating to whatever America does. America has now shifted to 125% tariff on Chinese goods, essentially doubling the price of a Chinese commodity into the US market. And we've seen China do the same, saying you're going to give us 125, we'll give you 84%. So you can see that it's quite a calculated move from both countries, where the US looks at the weaker Chinese renminbi, and the Chinese also look at the stronger, relatively stronger Chinese US dollar. So that's why we're seeing them not go up to that 100%. In a way, they're being considerate of how much of this the consumer can actually absorb. So that's what we're looking into, what that does for the global landscape. Are we going to see some shifts and realignments? So we are waiting to see what those deals are. But in terms of what's next, nobody knows. We don't know whether to expect the Federal Reserve Bank to act. We don't know whether we expect Cabinet to act. It's quite not clear, because there seems to be no problem except for the administration being the problem.
Yeah, speaking of shifts, unfortunately, Eswatini as well has also been caught in the mix. So what does this shift mean for Eswatini's exports and import costs?
Unfortunately, nothing. Because we were at that 10% tariff bracket, right? And that remains as it were.
So it's good on our side.
It's not, actually, because we've had to deal with this 10% tariff, which was new, essentially nullifying AGOA. But right now, what we're seeing with the 90-day freeze, that 90-day freeze actually applies to reciprocal tariffs. You know, those countries that were they were charging tariffs to the US, and the US is now retaliating to those. So he's saying, no, the ones that didn't retaliate to my retaliation, I'm not going to charge you for the next 90 days while we work out a deal. But China, since they retaliated, the tariff stays at has actually increased to 120%. And also, if you look at Canada and Mexico, because they retaliated, the tariff has actually just remained. And also the tariffs on steel and automotive imports, actually those ones remain. And the 10% blanket tariff across the globe, that one remains, which is the one that Eswatini was battling with, this new dimension, but it's still there. So really for us, there hasn't been any change, but we are waiting to see how, after we get onto the negotiating table, after Africa gets onto the negotiating table, what that would mean for AGOA. But essentially what it also does, Lungelele, is this advantage we talked of yesterday. You see how fast everything is moving right now. Yesterday we talked of issues such as the ability of Eswatini to attract direct foreign investment into the country as a result of South Africa paying a 30% tariff into US and Lesotho paying a 50% tariff into US. But right now everyone is back on 10%, so we are now again operating on equal footing. So just yesterday with an advantage, today it's gone. That's just how things are within the Trump administration.
Yeah, and some experts in the US are accusing the president that he may have triggered a market manipulation. Could this be his strategy all along?
Yeah, I mean, I did at some point talk about that in private and also on my social media accounts, that this could all mean that. So we don't know.
Yeah,
we are just waiting on the Securities and Exchange Commission to do their investigation, and if there is something, and if they find something out, then we are going to find something, then we are going to know about it. But right now there are insinuations. My thinking on this is President Trump did this manipulation to actually put money in the pockets of Americans, right? Because you crash it, the prices go down. Virtually every American can now be able to afford buying those stocks. And then when they're going up like they did today, the markets rallied yesterday, and the value of the stocks shot up just back, almost back to the levels they were a couple of weeks ago. So imagine having come that low, and then right now your net worth has ballooned. That works for him, and it works for his base. In terms of insider trading, I really cannot be sure of that. That one requires quite a lot of investigations to really decide and agree on who benefited from all of this within his administration and people quite close to him. But what we know right now is Elon Musk lost quite a lot, around 34 billion in terms of his net worth. But we do not know what he was busy buying during that time, right? So we are yet to see how it's going to look like.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Beer, for your insight. After the break, we take a closer look at today's market's reaction with Mr. Sbiya himself. Stay with us.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Welcome back. It's 22 minutes after 2. This is the final segment of this program. We're still with Mr. Sbiya. He gives us his market analysis today. We take a closer look at the market reaction. All eyes are on America, Mr. Sbiya. What's happening in markets today?
Markets are quite happy. You know, markets are quite happy. They've moved from what President Trump called it a bit yippy to a state of being a bit happy. I mean, if you look at the American indices, they have actually shifted upwards. We've seen the S&P 500. If you remember, you know, shares in the top 500, that 5,400 mark, but it remains to be seen if they are going to get back to that 6,000 region that we were at when everyone was riding the Trump train and the Trump euphoria. Nasdaq, if you look at that tech-heavy Nasdaq, it's still there at around 17,000. We were talking 19,000 just before Thursday last week, but now we are on 17,000 after crashing to 16,000 just a couple of days ago, and then the Dow Jones Industrial Average again just barely back on that 40,000 mark, with you know, hopes that if we get clearer communication coming out of the White House, then it should go back to that 44,000. In terms of the Nasdaq, there's also issues with the chip imports and what Taiwan does and what China has done. You know, I mean, we know the first phase of that trade war when it started. China, you know, curbed some exports of rare earth minerals, which are quite critical for the tech sector. And also Taiwan was slapped with the biggest, one of the biggest tariffs earlier on in the week. So now that's what markets are looking out for, to see how it's going to play out, how Taiwan is going to come back into the picture, such that if you look at the shares in the Taiwan semiconductor company, the TMC, again, not really doing well today, purely because we are still looking out and looking in terms of what is going to happen. So until and unless we get clearer direction, then we will know what is happening. If you then go across the pond into Europe, it's quite a lackluster performance within Europe, right? If you look at the FTSE 500, the FTSE 100, are just barely on that 8,000 mark. I mean, yesterday it was touching that 7,000 mark. So we usually on around 8.6 on that in terms of an average share in the top 100 companies within the UK. So that now has somehow just reneged. And then when you look at Germany, we know that Germany is a major exporter of manufacturing components, right? So we do know that their automobile industry will be hit by the fact that those tariffs on the automobile industry still remain and those exports of car parts. But there is quite a number of commodities that Frankfurt sends to the US. And then the CAC 40 there, if you recall, those are the figures that we were talking about, like early June or July last year, before that snap election, right? So France is not really reacting as much as we would have wanted it to react to those news. That's purely because we're also seeing on the background of everything, President Macron being the second country in the European Union that wants to recognize the state of Palestine. So there is a bit of that uneasiness within the French markets of how the whole world is going to react to that and how America is going to react to that. Is it going to attract more wrath from the Americans, or everyone is going to be okay about it? And bear in mind, we have a very vindictive president in the US, a president who wants to take it over and build a Riviera of the Middle East, and then the US saying you recognize it as a state, then it's going to become a problem. Again, we move into the Asian markets. So what we see there is, Asian markets closed on a very bit of a high note, right? Trying to act back those gains, but really just still watching. So we can see a lot of caution there, because if markets were somehow okay with this 90-day freeze, remember it's a 90-day freeze. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty what 90 days means. I mean, it's the question of what's next, which nobody right now can answer. And we know, again, Japan is an automobile exporter. That's one of their main exports. So they still have to contend with that tariff. But we are seeing again those gains again in Hong Kong, performing relatively well, but we do not know how they are looking into. Remember, that's a semi-autonomous province of China, so we don't know if those tariffs are going to hit on them as well. So there is a bit of that resilience in there. And then in the mainland, the one that we expected to perform very badly in today's trade, you can see they closed on the green because of those pushbacks coming out of President Xi's cabinet and the Communist Party of China, where it's being a tit-for-tat type of thing. They're all showing strength. Everyone's saying we are going to win this. So markets are somehow looking how everything is going to play out. And then again, coming into South Africa, markets taking this semi-cautious state again, regaining those 3,000 points on average. So right now what we are waiting to see is we should see a bit of that stability until 1 May, while we are looking at how this whole GNU issue is unfolding, in seeing if the ANC is going to go ahead and implement that 0.5 VAT tariff, that VAT increase in terms of taxes. So everyone is doing taxes, so we're almost calling it tariffs across the globe. So we're looking into that and seeing how that is going to play out, and how Pretoria is going to also reposition itself in terms of its relationship with Washington. But right now, what we're seeing is the fact that South Africa has not been named on those countries that are also going to remain on those high tariff levels. Let's say yet, because we're still getting more news coming out of the White House. But right now, going forward, we should look out for the GNU story, and whether the DA stays within the GNU. That's what's going to move the South African markets. Domestically, we've not seen any changes. And then in terms of the commodities, Commodities, gold has actually increased a bit because of the return of a bit of semblance of what you call certainty and predictability for the next 3 months. And then again, Brent crude oil still under pressure, but you know, that relief. So Brent crude is still also counting in or factoring in the issue of a trade war with China, because these are the two major global major trading partners and the biggest economies in the world. So if they go at it, the whole world may suffer, and eventually demand may not be as high as one would have hoped it would be. And then in terms of the currencies, we can see the local currency getting a bit of ground across all across the Japanese yen, and losing a bit of ground against the euro and the dollar because of those shifts around, you know, those shifts around what you'd call your bonds market, and now investment going back into bonds and equities.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Spear, for that analysis. Well, there you have it, today's market analysis with Sanele Spear. We've come to the end of our program. Thank you for tuning in. This was the last episode this week. We'll see you again next week, Monday, at exactly 2 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a beautiful weekend. We'll see you on Monday.